Let's go.
This is turning
into one of the weirdest shows I've ever done.
This is the I'm Working On It podcast with Matthew P. Brown. Shaboy!
There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you hear yourself?
Yeah. It sounds better than before.
Yeah, I think maybe the batteries being low was affecting the playback.
Nice. All right, guys. Well, you're hearing the wonderful voice of Will Noonan over here.
Good evening.
Hello. I feel like I'm on your pod because we're in your car using your stuff.
This is my studio, basically, my car. I'm literally in the driver's seat.
Yep.
Which I was thinking that on the way here. I was like, maybe I should sit shotgun.
That's fine.
But we're all set up.
It's your car.
Now.
I wouldn't take it over.
But yeah,
like
we're
that.
doing your podcast. But I am gonna be lazy and release this on mine as like an episode.
Nice. Yeah, do it, man.
But I do that.
High Pathetically.
Hypothetically.
Go subscribe, rate, and review.
Yeah, dude. I could use those. My fans did that a long time ago, so they don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Need that.
The rate and the review, I heard, help it grow a lot.
Does. The biggest thing, too, is just like telling one other person to download it and check it out.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times that's how you get a brand new listener. And people kind of don't really, you have to tell them to do that. You have to be like, hey, tell people about it.
Do you have random locations where a lot of people listen?
Yeah. Especially you're like at episode 18, right?
Yeah,
so
you're number 18.
That's like starting to happen. I'm at episode 190.
Yeah.
So a lot of my little random places have become, because of people telling people, like,
Yeah.
at first I had a few random English, like, men in English countryside, and now it's like a big chunk of the audience.
Nice. Yeah, I've got some Italy, some UK, random things, but a lot of people in Nevada listen for some reason.
There you go.
I don't know what it is. But
I don't know, just sitting with you, I feel you put out a Nevada vibe.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
what it is, dude.
You have
just really hot.
You have a lot of earth tones in your in your skin.
That's exactly what it is. All right, so how did you start your podcast anyway? So it's Hypothetically, get it on iTunes and everywhere.
Hypothetically with Will Noonan, technically, is what it's called. But it wasn't at first. It was called the Will Noonan Podcast.
Nice.
Super original, awesome name. And I was never less famous, so like, why do a podcast where it's like, it's just my name? Obviously, my fans will come. But I wanted to. I was into Bill Burr's podcast and Joe Rogan's podcast.
Dude, those are like 1 and 2 right there.
Yeah, and this was a few years ago, and like there were a lot of comedy podcasts, but not as many as there are now. And but it wasn't just like, oh, I like these. It was like Rogan said a bunch of times, like, oh, doing this podcast has like made me better at stand up. And I remember it was like him and Bill Burr were talking together, and Bill Burr was like 100%, like, I'm so much better because I do a podcast, especially because I do it alone. So I was basically just like, at that period of time, I was like doing anything I could to try and get better at comedy. So I was like, all right, another thing.
Yeah.
So at first I did it on my phone, and I did like 2 or 3 that were terrible, and then I did like 15 episodes, and I actually had a lot of listeners in the early days because there wasn't that much on iTunes. But the company that was hosting it was called like Pod Monster, and they just like went out of business. But they went out of business they just disappeared. So no one had their login. You couldn't log into your podcast. You couldn't like.
Was stuff still like on iTunes or whatever?
It was on
iTunes,
iTunes, but you couldn't edit, or you couldn't put up new episodes, anything. So it was kind of like I had no choice but to start over again with Libsyn and just hope to bring some of that audience. It took like a full like 6 months to even get close to like back to the numbers that I was at before. But
you got back.
I got back, and I think the name's better, and the podcast was better after that because I had some practice and stuff.
I love the name.
Thanks, man.
Hypothetically.
Yeah, you know, I get comments on the name from like Like, it's not even like comics are like, I love your act. They're like, oh, that's a great podcast. Like, some really impressive people have been like, I really like the name of your podcast. I'm like, thank you.
Nice.
But then I'm like, what about everything else? And they're like, eh.
Yeah. Take it or leave it.
You know.
No, dude, but it is great. And you helped me out when I was starting this, because I remember we were at McGreevy's one night.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, I'm starting a pod. I showed you the logo and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I'm about to put it on iTunes. And you were like, through what host? And I was like, I had no idea what you were talking about.
Yeah.
And then that's when you recommended Libsyn.
Yeah, I'm big. I do that like probably like once a month with somebody. Like Jimmy Dunn and Tony V just started a podcast.
Yeah, two Boston guys or
two
something?
Boston guys whacking up a pie. And I just like helped them all the way with that, because I was like, basically because I don't want anyone to go through what I went through, which is like building an audience and then losing it. Because it sucks. You're like, oh man, like, and Libsyn is like, no complaints, 0 complaints.
Oh yeah, dude.
And they do such a good job. It's so easy to use, and it sound. I wish they sponsored me, but they don't.
Yeah, I know, right? It sound like they throw it out. Like, if I ever have an issue or anything, I'll email them. I'll be like, I know it's me because I don't know how to do this. They answer in a couple hours.
Yeah,
and fix it.
I've tweeted at them for stuff, and the other good thing about being on Libsyn is, like, if you're fucked, like Joe Rogan is fucked,
right.
Bill Burr is fucked, like, so, and most podcasts are fucked, so it's not like you're the only one whose podcast isn't working.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, they're definitely like the Coca-Cola of of podcasting.
Where was the first place you ever did stand up?
I started in New York City.
You did?
Yeah, lived down there. I went to college there, and I stayed there till I was 26. I lived down there for like 9 years.
Damn.
I was there for 9/11.
Oh shit.
That was actually 2 months after I moved there.
Whoa.
So like, but I didn't start
crazy.
stand up until 2007, and then first place I ever did it was this place called the Underground Lounge on 106th and
Nice.
Broadway. And this guy Jeff Cole ran it. A lot of guys, like, do you know Sam Morrell? Sam
Yeah,
Morrell?
I don't know him personally, but I know
He was
who that
there the
is.
first night I did it. Like, we the first couple years I did comedy, like, we were on most of the, like, we were
Nice.
on all the same shows. So, like, that kind of age, that's how you can tell what age I am.
Would you go up like every night when you first started, or once a week?
I had
or
this
something?
I had a really weird, not usual path to stand up, because I was like, I started out, I was an actor. I went to, like, I was a child actor. I did like plays and like some commercials and stuff.
Nice.
And I wanted to be an actor as long as I could remember. I also like was obsessed with stand up comedy, but I just thought it was like pro baseball. It was like it was like great, like awesome, love to watch, but like I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And went to acting school and did a bunch of like off Broadway plays, and that's like a super tough life. I still act, but like the fact that it's not like my dream or my main like thing is such it makes the whole thing easier, because like when you're trying to do it, it's like trying to get your ex-girlfriend to come back to you. It's like you have to not try for it to work.
Right.
You know? That's that's what acting
a great
is.
Analogy.
You're like, please, 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 and she's like, oh, you're so pathetic, you know? And then you go and you're like, you know what, fuck it, I have a new girlfriend, her name is stand-up comedy, and all of a sudden she's like, come back, I want you. And that's what happened for me eventually, but anyway, I was drinking a shitload, I was depressed. I got this job as a karaoke DJ in bars in New York, and that's when I started letting like, all right, so now I'm like hosting this show for 4 hours a night.
Yeah.
At first
4
I was
hours.
Yeah, and at first sometimes more, and at first I would be like just real basic about it, but then I just got bored and I started like talking and telling jokes and like roasting the people in the crowd and stuff. And like really quickly people started to be like, my friends were like, dude, like just do stand up. Like it's almost like you've been fighting it, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, and some people in the crowd were like, you should do stand up. So then I tried it, first open mic at that Underground Lounge, and then they were like, come back this weekend, like perform this weekend, right after my first open mic.
That's sick.
So I was like, damn, I am fucking awesome. Like I knew it. Like I knew I would be this good, right? And then I come back that Friday, and the dude like hands me like a stack of flyers. He told me he's like
I
come
see.
2 hours early. I'm like, cool. Yeah, I probably want to hang out and talk comedy for a couple hours. I show up. He hands me like this stack of flyers, the yellow flyers. He's like, go out and hand these out for a while. It was January.
Ooh.
He's like, go hand these out for a couple hours. Come back and do 5 minutes. And then I did that I would do karaoke like 3 or 4 nights a week, hosting, and then on weekends I would do that every single weekend for like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. I think I just am I.
Did that fall out?
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. Let me pause it. I got another one.
All right.
There we go.
Are we back?
I just
Okay.
called myself a pro podcaster. I'm like, no, wait. No, wait.
That was a quick fix. This sounds way better.
It was a quick change, right?
Yeah, it was like a NASCAR driver, but of this. We're in Will's car, and he just reaches in the back seat and grabs another cable for the mic.
Yeah, I got pulled over not that long ago, and the cop was like, what are you, a musician or something? I was like, no, I'm a comedian.
What are you, musician? You make songs in your car?
I was like, no, I'm a comedian. I just happen to have shitloads of like
Cable.
microphone wires and cable.
So yeah, what were you saying, dude?
I was
Sorry
just
about
saying I think I was telling you how I started.
that. Yo, yeah, and you're passing out flyers.
Passing
You
out a
do
lot
that
of
every
flyers,
weekend.
barking, Sam and me and Carolina Hidalgo and Andy Picaro
Nice.
and Hiawatha Rolland, who's dead now, who was super fucking funny. Died accidentally. Wasn't like a tragic comedian death.
Yeah,
He
okay.
just drowned.
Just drowned.
just
You're like,
drowned.
it wasn't tragic. He just
It was
drowned.
definitely tragic. Don't get me wrong. Like we were all extremely sad.
Yeah, that's
But it was
brutal.
like, I was like, was it drugs? Did he kill himself? And they were like, no, he drowned. And I was like, well,
Yeah.
accident is better than that. Oh my God.
Nice. Turn it up, baby. That's some sexy music
It's 'cause
for a
it's-
ringtone.
It's Biggie Smalls, man.
Oh, I love Biggie. Who
Uh,
are some of your favorite rappers?
Oh, that's a great question. No one's ever asked me that, Matthew.
Yeah.
My favorite rapper. Actually, you know what's even funny that you say that? Sometimes when I'm like too stressed out about something, if I feel like I'm like too anxious, I'll play a game with myself where I see just how many rappers I can name.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
Like just come up with, right?
Like fake names
You
or
can,
real
no,
names?
like how many can I name? So I'll be like DMX, 50 Cent.
I like that you start with DMX.
I know, but it's just trying. Sometimes if you're like ever like feel like you're gonna have like a panic attack or something,
Yeah, every
you gotta
second
think
of my
about
life.
something else, and you start trying to think of rappers, and you start trying to think of song, and then you just start going like, oh, I love that song, or there was a hot chick in that video, and then and then you calm down.
I'm gonna try that because. Do you have a lot of anxiety? I'm like. through the
Yeah,
roof.
I'm much better at dealing with it than I used to be, but yeah,
Yeah,
it
same
used
here.
to like dominate my life.
Same. I had a lot of trouble with it, and it's like I know it will always be there,
Yeah.
but I can at least like go walk outside now.
I
you
think
know?
the thing to remember with that is like, it's not so much that it's always going to be there. Is if there's one thing I've kind of made peace with is like I'm always going to have like a period once or twice a year where I'm experiencing that.
Yeah.
It's not just going to be like there's a temptation to be like, "Oh man, I feel good. Why can't I always feel good?" And if you're of the type to be anxious, it's like it might not even be every year or twice a year, but you know, it's kind of like you always think you have it beat, and then it kind of creeps up on you. But it could be. I always tell people, it's like of all the life afflictions, it's so not bad because you can't really die from it.
Right.
It's not like debilitating. Like some people have like MS. So
Yeah. That's that is
just
true.
thinking you have MS is not as bad as actually
Right.
having it.
So I'll ask you a question that I always ask, but typically at the end, but we're talking about it now. But let's go to the rappers first.
Oh yeah. Like obviously Biggie Smalls probably like I would say is the greatest of all time.
He's in my top
Yeah.
2 or 3.
But
he might be number 1.
if I have to go by like there's a lot of guys that I like respect
Yeah.
that I think are like that are great, like Nas for example.
Oh, yeah.
But like
insane.
if I'm talking about who I'm really listening to most,
Yeah.
Biggie Smalls, Kanye, a lot of Lil Wayne. I'm a guy who loves Lil Wayne.
Old school Lil Wayne or new Lil Wayne?
Both.
Yeah.
I'm just a fan. And here's Drake. Obviously, I like Drake. But my 2 favorites for probably the past like couple years have been 2 Chainz and Vince Staples.
Okay. So you like some of the newer rap?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Vince Staples is probably like what dominates my like iPhone and playlist the most.
Okay.
Went to his concert. I got
Nice.
I bought a bunch of shit.
Where was it?
I got it's funny like No, I'm far from like having any type of like wealth or money, but I'm finally like financially sound.
Yep.
And which for a comedian is unbelievable.
Yeah, that's.
So I blew like when I go to concerts, I'm like, give me the hooded sweatshirt, you know, because it's like I'm a grown man
Yep.
and I can buy that shit now. Because
Yeah.
it used to be like when I was a kid, I'd be like, oh, maybe 3 beers and like
Yep.
you know, and
Nah,
even then you're like so.
Yeah.
I think about it all the time because I had a brush with being poor. Like I'm still poor probably compared to everyone listening to this.
Yeah. But you can buy a sandwich.
But I feel all right for me. But like I went to the my health insurance is all good and up to date and everything. I went to the doctor today and they were fucking up and not reading my health insurance card right and or like their computers or something. But man, the treatment I got there like when they thought I didn't have health insurance was like I was like, man, this hurts. Like this is.
Yeah, they just totally cut you out.
Not only that, they're kind of like rude to you and like kind of like dismissive and kind of like, well, you got yourself into this mess, loser.
Ugh.
Yeah, dude.
So then when they realized you had it, did it just like completely change?
I actually, well, it didn't come. Unfortunately, it wasn't like that sweet of like a resolution because I got so frustrated. I was like, I'm fucking out of here, and then I worked it out with them on the phone later. So
Yeah.
I didn't get that. I didn't get that sweet moment
Of oh, now you're nice to me, huh?
But yeah.
For
Vince Staples though, huge
yeah.
fan.
As far as rap goes, man, I love Biggie, but I love like original old school rap. Like I'll listen to NWA, Eazy-E. I love Ice Cube, Biggie, Tupac, Eminem.
Yeah. Eminem, I love. You know who I think is underrated?
Who?
Well, you'll probably mock me for this.
Okay.
I think Ludacris is underrated.
He's like it's like when you listen to the radio for like a fun song that's catchy. He's like that of rap.
But I feel like he was ahead of his time because people said that about him then when he was kind of compared to guys like Jay-Z and Biggie and like his contemporaries. But if you compare him to rappers now, he's like a fucking crafty, like hardworking, clever motherfucking rapper. You know?
Yeah.
So it's like you compare him to Future, you're like, wow, like this guy's a fucking this guy is Nas, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Library on top of the books, but you can't be too loud.
Yeah, I've been kind of going back because I was making this like I was making an Apple Music hip hop playlist for myself, and I was like kept catching myself being like I need to put another Luda song because I kept liking everyone. I never really was a huge fan of his either, but
he was huge, man, and
it ages well.
Dude, I had a conversation like this with my girlfriend the other day.
Yeah,
we were in the car. Yeah.
Isn't that great?
It's romantic. We were in the car driving. And we were going out to eat, and she was like, Ludacris came on. She's like, I don't care what people say, but I think Ludacris is underrated.
Yeah.
And when you just said that, it brought me right back to that.
I'm telling you, man. Like I had that conversation with my buddy Pat Barrett because I was like, dude, like I think Ludacris is underrated. He's like, you know what? He kind of is. Like when we were listening to him, it's like, so he's got like 10 top 10 hits.
Yeah.
And you think they all sound the same until you listen to them back to back, and you're like, oh, there's some differences.
And he's got all the Fast and Furious movies, which
I saw him once in L.A. eating dinner. He took his mom out to lunch. I was eating lunch, and I saw him taking his mom out to lunch, and I was always like, I like that guy.
Yeah.
Takes his mom out.
Good.
Yeah.
Stay humble.
All right, we're good. Full battery and everything.
Nice. And all right. So what kind of got you into doing stand-up in the first place? Like, was there any, like, some people will see, like, a Eddie Murphy special or some shit. Is there anything that kind of triggered that for you?
Yeah. Yeah, like, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with the movie Ghostbusters.
Oh, yeah.
And I was obsessed with Bill Murray. Like, the oldest memory of something like that I have is like being really little, like 5 or 6.
Same.
And telling my parents like I want to be like Peter Venkman.
Yeah.
And then being like, well, Peter Venkman's not real. Movies are like made and they're filled with actors.
Yep.
And this guy Bill Murray is like this hilarious. I remember them saying comedian, but like I kind of knew like the difference already between like a stand-up and what he was, but
Right.
So then I was like, okay, I just want to be like a guy like Bill Murray when I grow up, right?
Nice.
So that was the
That's not a
earliest I
bad
can remember.
influence.
Then I remember being a little bit older than that, like 8 or 9, and Seinfeld had this thing, which I've since found thanks to Anthony Sabelli, which is like this HBO special he did when he was young, where he's like, he would tell his jokes and then like act in sketches of his own jokes, where like the
That's cool.
set was made out of like this crazy cartoonish paper type style. And I remember like as a kid, it like hit me on all cylinders because I was like, these jokes are funny, this guy is funny, and like these sets are like interesting and cool. And my mom was nice enough to like take, my mom was like really encouraging of like my creative, I think she knew she had like a creative kid.
Yeah.
She used to like do kind of some cool things like that. She would tape things like comedy specials for me and be like, oh, you probably like this.
That's
and
awesome.
she like nurtured that a little bit. And also she like would buy me, you know, I'd beg her for like a Sega Genesis.
Yep.
And she got me one. And she got me like this, I loved like basketball. And she got me like the basketball video game. But she was like, you can only play this if you turn the volume off and call the game yourself, like.
Oh, that's cool.
Cause she overheard me playing it and going like, bird passes to Parrish,
Nice.
Parrish passes to bird shoots. Oh, and she was like, so that's the new thing. If you want to play during the day, I think I had an hour or two at night. I could play whenever I wanted, but she was like, if you want to play during the day, you have to do that.
That's cool.
And like at the time, I was like, whatever, fine. But like looking back, I'm like, that was like a really cool thing.
Yeah.
She is a teacher, so I think she knew like how to do so. She probably regrets it that I actually when I actually became like a comedian, but I can remember it was always the thing was like, all right, I'm just gonna be like, I'll be something. I'll either be like an actor or in a band or something. And then I went to high school and like I auditioned for the movie Rushmore when I was like 12 or 13.
Yeah.
And I didn't get anything, but that got me like into the casting world, and so
That's cool.
So I did like a lot of auditions and some extra work, and I was on that show like Boston Public and shit like that. And then I was like tons of high school plays and did that whole thing where you like travel and do them for like other schools, and I was like super into it, and I think I was pretty good. Like I got like, you know, I was never like, it sounds corny, but I started getting like awards and stuff, and I was like, oh man, maybe I'm like, I found something I'm good at.
Yeah.
My brother's like a genius, goes to Harvard and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like, fuck, I've always kind of been the idiot. Like, maybe this is what I can do. So then when I was like, I want to go to acting school, no one was like, fuck you. They were like, all right, this is kind of like your talent, so go ahead.
Awesome.
And then, but it is, and then like I actually probably, if I had stuck with just doing that, and I'd worked as hard as I did later on when I became a stand-up, I probably would have done all right, but I pretty quickly got into like just drinking.
Yeah.
Like a lot of actors do it, man. New York City is like filled with people. It's so hard to just live there and survive and pay your bills that to act and actually do it is like really fucking hard. So people just are waiters and alcoholics who go like, yeah, I moved here 10 years ago to act, and you're like, fuck, that was 10 years ago.
Yeah. Did that kind of derail you from what you were doing, like from the acting and stuff?
Yeah, it did. Like, well, I did some cool plays and stuff, but I moved to LA after I did these plays. I had like the tiniest little bit of industry heat.
Yeah.
And I moved to LA, and basically it didn't work out. Like, it was just like one of those things where it was like, you know, and looking back, it was a little too early. I was a little too like, didn't look like right yet. I just kind of looked like a kid still.
You weren't fully cooked.
Wasn't fully cooked. Like I look at my old photos from those days, I'm like, yeah, no kidding. Like no one wanted to hire me for anything. I was a little chubby. I was a little kind of like tired and boozy. And I hadn't started stand up yet, so I didn't have like the confidence of like doing that.
I've done some acting things as well. Nothing as much as you. But don't you I would rather hang out with a comic than people that are like
that was a big part of it.
An actor.
That was a big part of it. Yeah, I one of the big disappointments of all of this, of all show business. One of the biggest disappointments is a lot of times you reach your goals that you've had for a really long time.
Yeah.
And you don't appreciate it like you did when you were like in the crowd watching and wanting it.
Right.
Like just for example, like last Saturday I performed for like 1,600 people in like this beautiful theater and it was like one of the biggest crowds I'd ever performed for.
That's awesome.
And I had a great time and all that. But I remember thinking when I was a kid watching shows, I'd be like, I bet this guy like enjoys like even hanging out backstage. Like I bet this guy enjoys like, I bet this guy every moment of his life is like fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
Or I bet even his thoughts are hilarious. Like whatever. And I was like thinking, yeah, it's kind of weird how this just feels.
Yeah.
It feels good and everything, but it feels so much more normal now because I've been doing it so long. I was like, it's funny. You almost don't get to like if I could go back and find the kid like myself at an open mic and be like, dude, like feel this for 10 seconds, I'd be like, oh my God.
Right, man.
But it's such a grind. It takes so long and it's such like a fucking effort. And I feel that way like acting. It was like my childhood dream. I was like, I just want to be a theater person. I love theater people. I want to hang out with them. And then I became one and I got into the theater and I was like, fuck these people, man. And I knew stand up. I had some friends. That was the thing. I started to make friends who were doing it. But I swear, I would go all the time in New York. I saw Bill Burr and like Patrice O'Neal perform for like 7 people.
Damn.
Like 10 times. Like we would go to
Couple
comedy
legends.
all the time. I saw some of the best comics like in the world perform for small crowds. Because we'd be like 12:30 midnight in New York, like we're 19, let's go. They'll serve us without asking.
Right.
So we would go and it'd be. I remember seeing Patrice O'Neal do like an hour for 6 people.
Wow, and getting to see how he handles that situation, you must learn a lot.
Yeah, and it's with none of the. You're not like this is Patrice O'Neal. You're like this is a guy I didn't know when I walked in here. And I didn't know who he was when I left. It wasn't until like I saw him on TV later. I was like, I've seen that guy 10 times.
Yeah.
Burr, I knew because he was from here and stuff, and I knew him a little bit, like from like I knew who he was a little bit.
Right.
But yeah. So I just kind of remember that period of time as just being like, it was exciting. Like once I discovered stand up, and it was 100% the very first night I did it.
Yeah.
Very first night I did my first open mic. I was like, I found like what I'm supposed to do.
Dude, I cannot agree more with that. That's so my whole life, you know, I played sports, I did all this different shit, but I was always like, this isn't what I am.
Yeah.
Or like who I am, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then I did stand up that first night. I lost 5 pounds the week I did stand up for the first time. I was so scared. And I couldn't eat.
That's about what I lose before something big. 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got up there, did it, finished, and I remember being like, that is what I'm supposed. That's who I am.
Yeah, I've talked about this on the podcast. Like I feel sometimes it's like the only thing that comforts me at night is like, you know, like it's like at least I have that. Like at least I have like this.
Yeah.
You know, and that's you'll find out one day when you're having like a real rough night with stand up and that wanes. You're like, what the fuck? Yeah. Like this one, but it always comes back. It just means you need to write more new shit. But like sometimes I got into a rut this year because I'm like a new headliner. So it was like, okay, like it's pretty much kill or go home every show because it's like most of the time it's the club or whoever's first time headlining me and they're like, let's go.
Yeah, let's see what you got.
Like you gotta kill, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you end up doing your best shit or your like hot hour every single night.
Yeah.
And I did, and I was happy, and you're getting like accoutrements, like you're doing radio, you're like hanging out.
Right.
So it feels like I'm a comic, I'm doing comedy stuff.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I was kind of like, why am I super depressed, like cranky, and like not really enjoying this that much?
Yes.
And I was like, oh, it's because I have nothing new. Like it's just driving, repeat, drive, repeat, drive, say the lines, you know?
Right.
That's why
autopilot
acting sucks and stand up is awesome because it's like you can change the script at any time, right?
Yeah.
No one gives a fuck or even knows.
Mm-hmm.
So I just basically had to have like a, you know, bite the bullet and be like, yeah, well, you know what? When it's time to do that perfect shit, do it. But I started going out more like on the weeknights here in Boston to McGreevy's and stuff like that, and just like just grinding out, even just bombing. It always makes me laugh because like there's a part of me that like doesn't want to bomb in front of everyone at all the other comics at McGreevy's because like I'm like, oh, they probably expect me to be funny because like I work, so they're like, oh, he works, he should be funny. But for me, it's like a fucking great time to go in there and be like, oh, that completely ate balls, but like at least like some of it worked.
But if people don't realize that you are headlining, so if they don't realize that you need to find new shit too, that's,
I know.
that's on them.
But
man.
I've heard it all the time. Like I've thought it about other people, and I've heard it. I've heard a million people come up to me, comics or open mic comics or regular comics. They come see you on a weekend for some reason. They just happen to be there or something. Like, wow, I never saw you do like a real set. Really good, man. I'm always like, thanks. And but that's just. But that kind of like stuff, it doesn't like really bother me, but sometimes you can see it in someone's eyes.
Yeah, but
it doesn't bother me.
You have to do what is gonna make you better.
Oh,
you know.
Yeah.
And your bomb too is a lot different than someone that just started bomb.
That's true.
Like, you can save yourself.
And I both know, like, well, you've seen a guy though, right? Like you've seen guys who like do the same material all the time at open mics to kill at open mics.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, like we all need to kill. We all need that feeling, but
I gotta admit, it took a while for me to not do material I know that works at like a weeknight show.
Yeah.
But now I'm just like, I need to build time. I'm gonna try shit. I'm gonna throw it out there.
And I do think I give people the advice, like, for the first year of doing stand-up, like, I don't think you should be writing a ton of shit. Like, work on the fundamentals of the game, which is, like, delivering the shit you have, taking the mic out of the stand, putting it back in. Like, those are things you got to be focusing on the first year. Getting over your stage fright or whatever sort of hang-ups you have about being on stage. And then when you start getting comfortable with that, then you can start, like, trying to fit shit in. If you need to spice it up every now and then a little bit.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But like, I remember a lot of comics, a lot of guys come in with an idea of like they need a new 5 minutes every week. It's like, dude, it's more like shoot 5,000 free throws before you do anything else.
Yeah, I remember when I found my first joke that worked. I was like, sweet, and I kept it, and I kept building on it. Yeah. And then I would just keep trying other things. And something that I said for myself, I remembered I was doing like 12 minutes. The same 12 minutes everywhere. Yeah. For a while. And then I was like, when I first started, I had 0 minutes. Yeah. And I was brave enough to go on stage and try new shit. Yeah. I'm like, I'm doing this all the time. Why can't I try? And then ever since I've had that thought, and then especially recently, I've been throwing out a ton of new stuff.
And I think that's kind of what makes stand-up like this fucking real amazing art form. Like, I think it's right up there with anything, like fucking playing an instrument or like being a fucking jiu-jitsu like master. It's like you can never, there's always more to learn. You can always hone your own technique. You can always, like, you know, like I work with some guys who've been doing it 40 years, and it's not like we can't talk. Like, I just worked with Don Gavin last weekend.
Oh, sick,
He's been doing
He's a Boston legend.
He's
a legend in general.
Yeah,
dude.
like, you know, he's the guy, like, when I meet someone famous, they're like, is Don Gavin still around?
Yeah,
you know, like, everyone loves him. So, like,
he's helped everybody, too.
He was like, what do you think of this? He tried a new joke out, and he was, like, asking me, like, what I thought about it, and we were, like, talking about it. And I was just like, you know what, that's just how, like, it is. Like, there's no era where you're gonna be like, all right, I never need to run this by anyone ever. Like,
well, dude, look at Louis, man. Yeah. He's like, you know, arguably number one, and Chappelle and like all those guys. And Louis goes to bar shows in every city. Yeah. He's in now with like List and all those people.
Yeah, man. I think it's
that's a comic, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not I don't know. Like, you got to take days off too. It's a tough balance, and I think that's like everyone has to figure out what their balance is. Yeah. Because I've also gone the other way where it's like you do too many shows, and then you're just a crazy like comedy like rabid wolf. Yeah. It's not making any sense, you know. Sometimes you need to like take a little break, but I go through periods where it's like I always call them like sometimes I focus on other things than writing, like just moving with intention. Like, you know, I like to move around a lot on stage, but I don't want to just do it for no reason. So I try and focus on like, you know, that sometimes, or other times I just focus on like, if I'll get real into one bit, like, and just work on that one bit for like a few months. Yeah, you know, I get really into that. My closer now was like that. It was like the one with the girl reading.
Oh yeah, dude.
That was like
I like that a lot.
That was like, that joke to me is like, you know, like guys who like carve canoes out of wood in their own backyard.
Yeah, dude.
Like
You
that's
got
that
from
joke.
your
I'll
tree?
look at that joke for the rest of my life. Like, you know what? That was my first. Like, that was the first one I did right.
Nice.
Like, that was the first one I really
That's
like.
the first one.
I did it correctly. It took me 9 years of stand up, but I finally like wrote that because there was like 20 times where I could have been like, it's just not working. It's not working. But now it's like the best joke I've ever done. It's everyone's favorite. It's
that's
like,
awesome, man. See, that's this. I'm not saying this, but that's like the whole I'm working on it thing of this podcast. Is when you find that thing. And we're about to get arrested right now.
That's an ambulance. We're about to get medical help.
Oh, it is?
See, this just adds a whole Grand Theft Auto quality to this podcast.
I like it, dude. Yeah, we're sitting in
as
a lot.
That was actually you're flattering yourself police coming to arrest me after I'm like, that was the best joke I ever wrote, and it's a winner. Everyone loves it. I sound like the president. Everybody loves it.
So you're under arrest. No, we're sitting in the parking lot. This comedy softball league starts tonight. It's a dusted-off game, so if you hear anything, that's what it is. But
if you see any dust
on this podcast, what were you just saying? Oh yeah. So is that what you would say? I hate saying like writing process, but is that what do? Do you think of shit in the car?
I do have
what's going on?
I got a notebook with me all the time. It's in my bag right now because I got some gum on it. But I'll write down like little, like really like one-liner things. But you know what? I just figured this out about myself like not that long ago, like comedy-wise, writing-wise. There were times where I was like, all right, I want to write a joke about umbrellas, like for example, right?
Yep.
Actually, not umbrellas. Everyone always uses that. I want to write a joke about metal signs.
Okay.
Right?
The old metal sign bit.
I want to write a joke about a metal sign, and then I'd sit down. Something like in the world would like be like, oh, metal signs are stupid, and then I'm like, sit down and try and write jokes about metal signs.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get some good, sometimes not. I don't really write like that at all anymore. Now I've kind of like learned to like look at like shit I'm saying over and over again to like people in my real life. Like, so if I'm like, I caught myself to use the girl talking bit as like an example of this. I noticed myself just being like, doesn't that bother you? Like to people all the time. Like, aren't you annoyed with that? And it was like, it was fucking with me, like annoying me in a real way. The first good joke I ever wrote was about my brother being gay because it fucked with me only in a funny way. Like I was like, oh my God, am I gay? Because my brother is? And then I was like, oh, that's a stand-up joke.
Yeah.
And it like connected with people because it was like a real thing from my life. And I had real stakes in it, right? So I was like, I'm annoyed to shit with this girl voice thing. And I could tell like other people were too by the way I was talking to them about it. So then I was like, all right, so this is something I'm interested in. That's why you see comics like write about dating all the time because like that's something obviously most guys are interested in. But it's like that's the first bus that comes by. Like you gotta see what else you're into. So normally I'll do that, and then I write like little notes as I'm walking around, or if I say something. This is something I think a lot of comics don't do. A lot of comics are like funny in their everyday lives.
Yeah.
If you say something funny, even if it's like a witty little comeback to something like your friend said, like write it down. You'll use it, like whether it's on stage 2 years later or in a script you write one day or in a fucking anything. Like write it down just second. Like it's like putting a little stamp on it in your brain. Like that was a valid thing to say. Like remember that, you know?
I agree with that.
I do a lot of that. And then I do actually sit like at a computer and have a notebook and I kind of like work things out. But it's like, it's kind of nice. Like as you get, like luckily now I can actually go work out material at like good shows.
Yeah.
You know, it's not as easy at open mics to like, to go do that.
Definitely.
Like I feel like at open mics you have to get to the point a lot quicker.
Oh,
so you end up writing like one-liners whether you want to or not. When you're allowed to like work things out on weekends or in front of crowds like at McGreevy's, you can kind of like stretch it a little bit.
That's one of the things, man. I say like a 15-minute set is the perfect set to really start working on shit.
Yeah, 15, 20, I think. 20 is like, I think 20 is like my, like the golden time.
Well, yeah, especially like if you're featuring, you're doing 20, 25.
Yeah, yeah.
But since I started doing 15-minute sets like a ton, everything's just grown.
Yeah, and that will continue. It's kind of like you give a flower like a bigger pot, it'll become like a bigger flower. It's because it's the same thing with like I want to punch myself in the face for that analogy I just made, but like where you put a fish in a bigger fish tank, it'll grow bigger. Because it's like I feel like the same thing happened to me big time when I started featuring. When I went from like 15 to a half hour, I became like a whole new comic. Because that half hour gave me, there was like 5 minutes in it I didn't have, and I would fill it with like riffs, and that ended up becoming who I really was as a comic.
Nice.
Like I found, between that and doing the podcast, I had finally dropped all these like influences. Chappelle, Seinfeld, Attell, all the people I was trying to be. Like my heroes were falling off, and I was finally like coming through.
You're finally being
as, like,
Will
the real
Noonan.
guy,
Nice.
which is corny sounding. I say that kind of thing a lot,
man,
but that's how it goes, man.
I totally get that.
It's stand-up comedy can be corny too,
yeah,
especially Christian stand-up comedy.
What would you say is your biggest bomb? Like one of your worst, not necessarily a bomb, but like a show where it was just like a train wreck. And what would you say is one of your best?
Well, you were just saying, you said earlier, like, it's not that bad anymore.
Yeah.
Like, if I bomb now, it just doesn't hurt me as much. Like, I did a podcast earlier this year where I do, around the holidays, I'll do private Christmas parties, which is hell.
Yeah.
I mean, no one should have to do them, but they pay amazing, and you're just like, it's the holidays, you're always feeling the pinch financially, so you're like, fuck it, right?
Right.
I did one this year that would probably be considered like people. I got letters from people. They were like, I had to turn off 5 times. Like I was getting cold sweats, my palms were sweaty. Like it triggered an anxiety attack for me listening to it.
Damn.
Dead honest, like emails and shit.
People wrote that were at the show?
No, that listen to the episode. Because I put the audio on the episode.
Oh, okay.
So people who listen to my podcast sent that in, right?
Damn.
But I was like, I fucking really was not that bad for me though. Like it was one of those things where I was texting the booker like right after, like, that was a fucking disaster. We're in trouble. Like you're in trouble or whatever. But like nothing to do with like for me, my worst bomb ever was at Nick's Comedy Stop. Believe me, I've had plenty of bad sets since before and since then.
I love Nick's.
But yeah, I do too. It's my favorite club ever. But it's like still hard to talk about. It was like when I first got up here, I was like really trying. I had to prove myself to everyone.
Yeah.
I was like from New York. I'd been on TV, but I wasn't that funny yet. I thought I was funnier than I was. I wanted instant like acceptance.
Yeah.
And some people were like, nah. But Nick's Comedy Stop was like, you're funny, and they were giving me like work and stuff, right? So I'm at Nick's Comedy Stop one night, and they're like all the guys I want, like Joe List was there, I wanted to impress him.
Great
Tom
comic.
Dustin was there, I wanted to impress him. Crone Whitman.
Oh, nice.
And all the guys from Nick's, and a couple chicks.
Yeah.
And it was just like
all the dudes and shit.
I think Phoebe Robinson was there, who's now also massively famous. Nice. And anyway, like I just went up, and like I had some issues, like the crowd. I couldn't see the crowd. It was like there's some lighting things, but anyway, I just bombed like hard.
Yeah.
But I had none of the skills of like to even acknowledge how bad I was bombing or say it or like make it. Because now I can pop that balloon 1,000 times. And it's like no big deal.
Yeah.
But I must have just looked scared because I was.
Yeah.
And it was really, really, really bad. Just one of those kind of like sad bombs.
Yeah, dude.
I remember something like I was getting heckled and I said something like, yeah, well, you're like an ugly bitch. And it was like crickets.
No.
And so I go outside after and I'm like sitting on like I'm like leaning against the wall. I'm like almost about to cry. Tom Dustin comes out. And I'm like, at this point, he was being super mean to me all the time. And I was like expecting more of it. And he was like, yeah, that was a tough set. And I was like, yeah, man. I was like, do you have any advice? Like, does this shit ever get any easier? And he's like, yeah, don't worry about it, man. He's like, it happens to everyone.
Yeah,
he was
sweet.
like, but then he was like, how long you been doing it? And I was like, 5 years. And he was like, yeah, well, you should be better than that now.
That's awesome.
But I do remember I went home that night. Like, it kept me up. Like, that fucked with me for days. And I remember that was when I decided I didn't write a new joke for like 6 months after that. I remember that was when I focused on, I took the mic out of the stand, I took the stand, and I would put it off stage so I couldn't even touch it.
Nice.
So, and I couldn't even, and it wouldn't be in the center, like drawing me to the center.
Yeah.
Like, it wouldn't be keeping me anywhere. So first thing I'd do, get rid of that fucking mic stand. Because right after that, I went to a black comedy show. I did a spot on like a black comedy show, and I watched all these black dudes kill.
Yeah.
And some of them were really funny, but some of them weren't. And I was like, man, I just need to like tell my shit. I need to like tell it with my face, my body, everything. I can't just be up there. Some guys can do it. I can't.
Steven Wright.
Yeah. Dan Bolger doesn't have to move around very much.
Yep.
But I do, you know? Or at least I thought I did and had to figure that out. I was like, something about me is making them tense.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, man.
So I spent like 6 months to a year working on that, and then and just making the jokes I already had better. And then
tightening them up and stuff.
Yeah, and the gay brother thing came out of that.
Nice.
And that period of time. Because at first it was like a shitty joke. It was just like, my brother's gay, and like,
right.
And like, I hope he doesn't get AIDS. Like, it was terrible, you know?
Dude, I'm happy that you gave that show as an example and then what you did with it. Because I have a big thing that you have to risk failure, and the only success you get is from risking failure.
Oh,
so the fact that you did that, went out, wasn't what you wanted, and if you crushed that night, you might have just kept doing the bad habits you were doing.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely.
what I'm saying? So, like, I love when people take a shitty thing, but then they go, no, it's actually really good.
Yeah, no, and comedy's very. I'm like, I am a Buddhist as well, and comedy is like, it's right. It's really like creepy how directly related the two things are, because they're both like a practice. Buddhism's not like a religion. They're both just like ways, like styles that you like can have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it's a lot of the things in life in general that you feel like are fucking bad and disastrous because they evoke like a strong emotion from you.
Right.
Those are actually moments where you're like learning the most.
Yes.
You know, it's just a growing pain, Matthew.
Yeah, no, exactly, man. And when you were talking earlier about how if you could tell like open mic you're going to be doing that show for 1,600 people and that feeling. I've had a couple things happen to me recently over like the last 6 months that have been like the biggest part of my comedy so far. And a few weeks ago, I had this show and it meant a lot to me. And I wasn't like anxious, but I had like that nervous energy.
Yeah, yeah.
And my girlfriend was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "You know what? I'm actually happy I'm feeling this."
Yeah.
Because it's new. It means I care about it. I've worked hard to get to this point. And
yeah, it's just excitement.
Yeah, dude. And like someday when I'm hopefully headlining a theater or some shit, I'll be able to think of that moment. Like, remember when this happened?
Yeah, yeah.
That was a big deal and how you
and
felt?
You'll still have, I mean, there's always kind of like, I was just saying this to somebody, there's always something that'll get you right back to that feeling.
Right.
What really ends up happening is you just become comfortable. You're already, like what you just said shows you're already becoming comfortable with that feeling.
Yeah.
Because that's really what you should do is like make friends with it. Don't fucking try and push it away and be like, oh, I should feel as calm as I do jerking off on my couch as I do going on stage. Like, no, you shouldn't. Like, why would you? You know,
right.
You're doing something fucking completely amazing.
Yep.
Do you think like Isaiah Thomas doesn't feel excited right now? He's got a game at 8 o'clock.
Man.
You know what I'm saying? It's like people were fucking. There's this thing where we're all supposed to be like calm, like we're like, because HR like mentality, like, oh, everyone's just calm and cool, and that's like the currency of life. It's like, dude, you know, show me a guy. There's a difference though between good nerves and bad nerves, and we've all seen the guy who's like too nervous, he's in his own head, he's gonna fuck himself up. But you know, I don't really get nervous for stand-up, but, you know, believe me, I do when it's like, hey, we want you to go. Like, when I did Gotham Live, I was all of a sudden, like, really fucking nervous because it's live. It's, like, my first national TV thing. Like, you put stakes. Like, I know Chris Rock probably doesn't give a fuck about doing comedy.
Right.
But I bet when he books the Oscar hosting gig, he's like, fuck. And I bet he still gets like, a little nervous before he goes out.
Absolutely, man.
So it's kind of like, those feelings are like, it just shows you still care sometimes, and that you're passionate about something. Like, and the other thing with stand-up is like, it's so easy to like forget that, like at the very core of what you're doing something like 99% of people could never ever do even once.
Right.
Like most people can't go up.
Oh yeah, man.
Most people couldn't write a fucking joke. Most people couldn't go up there and do it. It's easy in stand-up to be like, I'm not the best stand-up, so I'm nothing. Like, this guy has everything. I have nothing. So, but like compared to a lot of people, especially in the arts, like another part of the reason why I started stand-up was because I was an actor, quote actor, who hadn't really acted or performed for anyone in like a few years. The first day you do stand-up, you're performing for people.
Yep.
You can't do it without an audience.
Yeah,
so
man.
it's like, even if no one's paying you and you're doing open mics, you're still putting smiles on faces, like getting out there and performing every single night, which is not something actors get to do. Musicians can do it and stand-ups can do it, but a lot of other people can't,
Yeah.
So it's like, we have it pretty good.
Yeah, dude. I love it. And going back to like the feelings and stuff, that's one of the reasons I love stand-up.
That's my next podcast, The Feelings and Stuff,
yeah.
with Will Noonan.
Dude, that's part of the reason I do it, because it actually makes me feel something.
Oh, yeah.
And scared things and good things and all that.
Yeah, and you gotta like, that's another, to go back to doing the sets when like when you don't really have to or you're not on the clock. Like,
yeah,
I realized that about myself. Like, if I don't go up, like if I'm only going up on gigs and paid like gigs and weekend shits, like I lose like a certain like just a happiness level.
Yeah.
Because it's like there's something just about, you just got to do it. You got to get out there and do it for yourself sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
If you're only doing it for the money. And like I was only doing it for the, but it was like I was busy. So I was like, I was like, all right, I just want a day off. But I feel like that time was like better served doing a mic, because it's like, all right, they don't own all my stand-up. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's still my thing that I get to do. Stand-up is like, it's so fucked up. Like how I've listened to probably 70,000 hours of podcasts about stand-up.
Yep.
There's more coming out every day. I talk to other comedians about stand-up. I've been doing it 10 years, and I still want to talk about it all the time.
Oh, yeah,
like,
dude.
that's how fucking deep it goes.
Yep.
It's
totally
like a religion, like those like Jewish dudes can like study the Torah for like 100 years.
Yeah.
It's like that, and at the second before they die, they're like, I know, I learned one thing,
Right.
It's like that's what stand-up's like.
Dude, I totally stand-up. I talk about sports, stand-up, music, movies, and sex, and that's it. That's what I talk about.
That's the human brain, pretty much.
But dude, there is something about it, man. And I heard Whitney Cummings say this. She said, when you're a comedian, it's not a choice. It's who you are.
Yeah. No, it is not a choice, because, like, I've definitely tried to turn it off, and you cannot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Dude.
Like, I took 6 months off when I quit drinking, like, in almost 6 months.
I couldn't do that.
And it was like, and I'd been doing it for 3 years. But I was just like, it was like, first of all, it was going to be at least a month until I was like, I could.
I see. Yeah.
It was a month before I could go like anywhere.
Okay.
And then it was like, I didn't do rehab or anything. I just, I had to do it all by myself. But it was like,
I get what you're saying.
I was like fucked up. Like, it was like baby steps. It was like I had to start off by going to like McDonald's and being like, okay, I survived that transaction.
Yeah.
And then
do you drink at all now?
No. Smoke pot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I quit. I don't know. It's it'll be 8 years this year. I think at 10 years
that's awesome,
I
man.
might like rethink it. But I don't know. I don't miss it or anything like that.
Yeah, dude.
But sometimes I miss the like self-medication aspect of it. But not like in the. But that's the thing. Like, I'm an older guy now, so it's like I used to want to self-medicate myself to like black out, and now sometimes I'm like, I could use a glass of wine before going on a fucking plane.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like
shit
like that.
Yeah.
Like just that little. But I don't know. I smoke pot and I have Xanax if I need it.
Then you can go on the plane. You'll be fucking sound asleep between those two, dude.
Yeah, I don't really like to fuck with it. And I like the fact that you know, I like the health aspects that come with not drinking. They're pretty rewarding.
Yeah, I've talked about it on here a couple times. I don't get drunk anymore.
Yeah,
like
it happened again.
Yeah, sorry, I'm moving all
And
over the place.
I need new wires.
It's fine.
That was the brand new one I gave you at the beginning, though. Just so you
really?
know. Yeah.
I don't think I'm doing anything.
Just so you know, just FYI. No, it might actually be the
That's
microphone.
probably the mic.
Yeah.
But I've been drunk like once in the last year.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But I'll drink like 1 or 2 beers.
Yeah.
And just it takes a little bit of that, just like you can
Yeah,
take like
yeah,
a deep
yeah.
breath. But dude, when you like the drinking and waking up and just no energy and all that shit, man. Ugh, I'm so over that.
Yeah, I don't
For
know.
stand up, I want to be able to fucking think and be aware.
Yeah,
You know?
and there's also a lot of long drives with stand up too. I don't know how some
Yeah,
of these guys
dude.
do it, you know?
Yeah.
Like I
That's,
smoke weed and all that, but not usually on the road even anymore. Like on the I do when I'm not in the car, but I used to smoke weed and just drive while I smoked, but now that it's legal, it's kind of like it's in a weird way. I'm like, well, I don't want to break the law. Like, you know what I'm saying?
No,
Like before it was like, well, I'm breaking the law by even having this. I'm breaking the
Right.
law by smoking it. I'm breaking the law. Why not just fucking
Go all in.
go all in and drive and smoke? But now it's kind of like, well, I don't want to be like the guy who ruins it for everybody. You know?
No, I get where you're coming from with them.
But
So what's one of your favorite moments in stand up? Like favorite like person you get to work with or anything like that?
oh man, I got a lot, man.
Listen, baby.
Last Saturday was probably a new one.
Yeah.
Because I did this Boston like blowout show.
Yeah, dude.
But it was like this for me. It was kind of like this. It was like, oh man, like I felt like I was being like welcomed into like an elite club or something because of the people I was on the show with.
Yeah.
You know, I think most comedians are like insecure, and even if you do cool shit and you get cool shit, you're like, I'm not as good as so and so.
Yeah.
I'm not part of like that.
If you're a good person, that's your mentality.
Yeah, I think so.
Otherwise, you're like, yo, I'm the coolest motherfucker out here.
Yeah.
Come watch me.
But
Don't
like,
be
I was
that.
kind of talking myself down or something, and someone was like, "Hey, you're on this show. Like, fuck
Yeah,
you.
dude.
Like, you're here too. Like, you're just as good as anyone else
Right.
on." So I was like,
Who
"Okay."
was on? You,
It was like Gavin,
was
Tony V,
Okay.
Sweeney,
Oh,
Christine Hurley,
Yeah, dude. These
Orlando
are
Baxter, and me.
nice. That's a monster show.
And
I
I-
love Orlando, by the way.
Yeah, me too.
he's a great
he's
dude.
the shit. It was amazing.
And Tony and everyone.
Everyone on that show. That was
Yeah.
another thing. So it was kind of like that was one of those nights that was very special. I did the
Yeah, dude.
Oddball Comedy Fest a few years ago.
Yeah, that's fucking insane.
And that was like one of the best nights of stand up I've ever had because it was like
dude.
I did
That's a dream of mine.
I like hung out with Brody Stevens. Did at the time I was sponsored by PAX, which is like this vapor
nice.
thing.
Yeah.
My podcast was sponsored by them. So we get there and like I tell there's these 2 cute girls who work for PAX, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, you know, I'm like actually like sponsored by you guys, and they were like, yeah, whatever, like,
Sure,
they're like,
yeah.
get out of our face, right? So I'm like, all right, and then so I go over, and it's completely empty, and I'm there with Kyle Plouffe and Lamont and Brody, and we're like waiting for, they're like, all right, they're gonna be coming in soon, so Brody gets on stage, and like they open the doors, and like 2,000, 3,000 people just like pour in, and they're like,
Dude,
the whole space that was just empty is now filled.
that's awesome.
And it's like outdoor, middle of the day, looks like Warped Tour, you know?
yeah, man.
That's what the stage looks like. That's what everything looks like.
Damn.
So Brody Stevens goes out, kills, and then he's like, and it's in the intro of my like him introducing
Yeah.
me or outroing me is in the podcast. He's like, give it up for Will Noonan. I go
That's
up
awesome.
there. I had like a fucking awesome set.
Nice.
At that time it was definitely the biggest crowd I'd ever been in front of, and I could see every
Yeah.
one of them in the broad daylight. Couldn't believe how well it went.
Damn.
And then I walk off, and Brody Stevens is like, give it up for Will. He's like, crushing.
Yeah.
So I put that on the podcast, and I walk off stage, and the 2 hot chicks
I knew it.
are there, and they're holding like all this like, you know, free shit,
Yeah.
and they're like, great set. Like, our
yep.
manager sent us over with this stuff, and I'm like walking. I'm like, oh, this is how it goes. You have a
Yeah.
good set, and people give you free shit.
Now
And,
you want to talk to me.
And then we go like, and Kyle has a good set, and Lamont has a good set, and then we're done, and we're like walking through the crowd. Every 2 seconds, someone's like, "You guys are awesome,"
That's awesome.
and then we go watch the rest. We go backstage and meet Sarah Silverman and like smoke some
sick.
weed, and then we go out and we watch the rest of the show, and it's Sarah Silverman, Dave Attell, Amy Schumer, Louis C.K.
Jesus, dude.
And then we went home. It was like
That's
the
insane,
best day
man.
of comedy I could ever have, and I got to meet a bunch of
Wow.
people. I got like chicks' phone numbers. It was
Dude, that's
I got
all
a little
perfect.
taste of
That's
fame.
the life, man.
It was the best night ever. I remember being like so sad I wasn't. People were sending. Apparently, the next day they were in New Jersey and they had left our names on all like the signage.
Yeah.
So people were tweeting me from New Jersey, being like, "Dude, you're here too. That's fucking awesome. Like,
damn.
can't wait to see you." And I'm like, "I'm not there, but dude, I fucking wish I was. I like didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave the tour.
Dude, I can't. I wouldn't want to. I would stay there all night.
Yeah,
I would. That's one of those shows that I would be there 3 hours early, and I wouldn't leave.
that was
until they're
like right
no.
when Amy Schumer first got real
Popped.
famous, and it was I've seen her in clubs for like little
Yeah.
like little crowds, and then to see her with like this huge entourage and a black Mercedes with like a driver, it was pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Well, she's absolutely killing it now.
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
But dude, to be a part of that show and with those people and Louis and everyone.
yeah. It was
Mattel,
insane.
That's fucking.
It was
awesome.
a night of like, it was like the best. That was probably when you first said like was one of your best days in comedy. That was probably it.
Yeah.
I just. Other than like I've had days where like I got my dick sucked.
Yeah.
I've had sets where I like
That day's where I
got
got
great
my dick
ovation,
sucked.
had great ovations and stuff. Those were great days too.
Yeah.
But I think that Oddball Day start to finish was just like it was great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you ever hook up with a girl in a comedy club? You don't have
Yeah.
to give crazy details.
No, I
but-
think so. I mean, I definitely have in bars.
Yeah, that's a.
I've fully closed the deal in bars before.
There you go, Savage.
But I don't know. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I have. No, I have.
Yeah, Oddball Fest, man. That is.
There was one place where I definitely got some action, like right behind the stage, and I remember
Yeah.
I remember looking out at the empty showroom for a second, being like, "This is the life."
This is a comic, man.
My advice to people would be comics on the road. One of the things I've learned to do is is to just like go to the local strip club and like get a lap dance and like tell the stripper like you're a comic and,
Yeah.
and you just want to like find some cool shit to do in this city.
Yeah.
And a lot of times there's something about strippers and comics, they get along and they'll be like, "Oh, like, well, I'm getting off in an hour," and like,
Yeah, we're both a little
maybe
sad. I think
maybe
that's
we'll
why.
yeah, we're both a
You
little
know?
sad, and we both kind of sell our souls for money. So, like, like let's hang out, and that's worked out for me. I'm a little, I'm not into it as much as I used to be, but I've had some crazy good times with the stripper showing you around town,
That's awesome.
or a
man.
group of strippers.
That's living.
They'll put you in some hairy situations, man,
Oh,
where you're
sure.
like carrying unconscious women. Like what? This is like one time I was hanging out with a group of strippers, right?
Yeah.
And we're in a
crew.
regular nightclub, not a strip club. And this girl, this one girl, I don't know if she did drugs or if she was just shit-faced, but she was like fading, She was like sitting in her chair and like passing out. And it was still like way too early for that. It was like midnight, 11:30 or something. Her friends were just like, her stripper friends were just like not having it. They were
Yeah.
like, "Just get her out of here. Like, just call her an Uber." You know what I mean? Like, do something. So they called her an Uber, and the Uber eventually comes, and they're
Yeah.
like, "Well, just like take her to the Uber. Take her to the Uber." Like these chicks are just
Yeah.
doing coke and partying, and they did not want to take a break for their friend. So and I don't drink, So
Yeah.
I'm like always the one who's kind of like, "Okay, I'll take her to the
Yeah.
Uber." So I'm carrying like an unconscious girl.
That you don't know.
She's that I don't know. I
Right.
met that night. She knows me a little, but we met that night, and she's like, she can stand. She can't stand, but she can like hold a little bit of her own weight. So I'm basically
Yeah.
like walking her out, not straight up
Yeah,
carrying
yeah,
her,
yeah.
but basically carrying her through this crowded nightclub at midnight. And like, what creeped me out was like half the people were like, "You fucking piece of shit rapist."
Yeah,
Like,
probably
you're
think you're taking her
like
home.
you could see it in people's eyes,
Yeah.
And other people were like, "Yeah, buddy." Like I'd say a solid half were like, "Yeah, you're gonna get some tonight for
Weird,
sure."
man. That's weird.
And not just like women and men, and it was a
What?
mix all the way around. I remember being like,
I'm trying to help her.
because I was
dude.
mortified at the first couple of people who were like, "You piece of shit." And I'm like, "I'm just getting her an Uber. Like I'm
Yeah.
putting her in an Uber. I'm only like setting her up for the Uber driver to rape her." Because that's what it felt like. I remember being like, "Okay, bye."
Yeah.
Like, But
Dude.
she ended up being all right though. I found
That's
out. I
good.
followed up on that.
Yeah, I would have too. I don't blame you.
But that's a situation a stripper will put you in.
Yeah, I'd be too scared. I would have ran away if they were like, "Hey, let's go to this club."
They're
"Let me
always
go to
like
the bathroom."
doing coke like secretly. Like if you have one in your car, like
Yeah.
just know that she has coke. So now you have coke in your car too. Like just
Yeah,
take
then you
that.
get
Just
screwed.
don't even expect anything but that.
You hear that, everybody?
So
Keep
if you
that
don't
in
want
mind.
coke in your car, don't let a stripper in your car. The two go hand in hand.
So aside from Oddball Festival and stuff, who are some of your favorite people you got to work with?
Jeez, my favorites. Owen.
Well, you don't have to like. I know, as a comic, you work with a bunch of people you like.
Yeah.
But has there been like a weekend or somebody you went
Yeah,
on tour
Nick
or whatever?
DiPaolo was a guy that I like opened for. That I was
Yeah,
like.
that's sick.
I mean, I've opened for like some crazy motherfuckers. Like,
yeah.
a lot of them before they were like. I opened for Michael Che and Colin Jost like
Yeah.
back-to-back weekends while they
Nice.
were right before they both got the gig.
Sweet.
So it was like I was like, oh, like
yeah.
but like those don't stand out really as like anything different.
Right.
But like Nick DiPaolo was like one guy that I was like, a guy from early on is this guy Kyle Dunnigan who he's done some stuff. He's a guy that like that was the first time opening for a guy on the road, and like
Yeah.
I just sat and watched like a kid in a candy store like every single night. And he was really good. But so
That's
that's
awesome.
kind of like a fond nostalgic memory of like, oh my
Yeah.
God, like I'm working with this guy. He's been on Comedy
Yeah, dude.
Central. But DiPaolo was not that long ago. That was one that was like really big. Anthony Cumia working with him, not on stage, but on his show.
Yeah.
That's like really big.
That's sick.
That's like you feel like you're in the presence of like a real true genius.
Yeah.
Same with DiPaolo.
Yeah.
Trying to think,
Monsters, man.
on the opposite end of that, like Dave Coulier, like
You work with Dave Coulier?
I worked with him
That's
a bunch
hilarious.
of different times, and
Cut it out.
and he's that was more like I can't believe I know Dave Coulier.
Yeah,
like, it's
yeah.
so
Uncle
weird.
Joey.
Like I'm like by the the third day when you're like, I wish this guy wouldn't fart so much around me. You're like,
Yeah.
You're like, it's so weird. Like at first day, you're like, Uncle Joey in my presence, and then by the third day, you're like, I wish he didn't fart all the time.
That does happen, man. Like you get to the show day one and you're like, holy shit. And sometimes I'll be like, I don't want to fuck anything up.
Yeah.
And then by that last day, you're just like, you're like buds.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's really
different,
it
man.
happens real quick.
You're spending a lot of time together. You're sitting backstage. You
Dave
know?
Attell. I never opened for Attell, but I've like hung out with him a few times, and
That's cool.
that stands out. Those are the people. Like those are people. Like when I meet them, I'm like, all right, these are the people. I feel like I'm like forgetting a huge one. Owen Benjamin's another guy.
Dude, yeah, that's a million people.
Sometimes
You're
you work with a
beast.
dude. It's always cool when you work with a dude who's like a total stranger, and then you really
Yeah.
are friend. Like me and Owen Benjamin were like that. Like we
Yeah.
actually made friends, which is
That's awesome.
that doesn't happen all the time.
All right. When I almost touched on this earlier when we were talking about rappers, and I was like, I have this, and we'll come back to it.
Yeah.
Just remembered.
Oh yeah.
So it's a question of the pod. When you're down, out, because that shit happens, you know? You're like, fuck, you're not feeling
Absolutely.
creative, all that stuff. When that happens to you, what do you do to kind of pull yourself out of that?
It's all so bad. Like I mean, like it's not bad, but it sounds lame. Like I go running,
Yeah.
I go hiking. I like to do that. I like to go hiking or running. Hiking more for thinking about material. Running for like I'm stressed
Yeah.
and I'm sad.
Mm-hmm.
That always cures me. I meditate a lot every day. Not a lot every day, but every day.
Yeah.
And
Dude, that's a huge. I love that.
that's
that
a
helps
huge
so
thing.
much.
Yeah, that was probably I started running and meditating around the same time, and it was like a double whammy of like good fixes.
You ever do yoga?
I did in acting school. We had to do it.
Yeah.
But
Dude,
I do it. I still do the sun salutation to like stretch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to wake up. Skip coffee. Heard someone say that. But
I know. I gave up coffee for like a few days, and
yeah, I can't.
and I my new thing is I just give it up when I'm stressed, and then when I'm done with the stress, I
go back.
go back to coffee. I can
Yeah.
drink it fine when I'm not stressed. If I'm stressed, I should not drink coffee.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do it anyway. You're like, all right, I need to be awake to deal with the stress.
Yeah.
But
No, I totally I get that.
But I've been trying to think of like things like that as more like, like I don't want it to rain when I want to go outside and like have a picnic, but
Right.
I can't help if it's gonna rain, so I just got to deal with the rain that
Dude.
day. So that's how I try and look at like things like that. It's like,
Yep.
Through advertising and fucking movies, we're like we think we're supposed to be like a lot happier than we are.
Yeah.
Like life is ups and downs of every level.
Yep.
It's like my dad is dead, and it's like like they're out of hot dogs. Like both of those things
Dude.
register on the sad scale. Obviously,
Yeah.
completely different things, but it's like in today's culture, it's like even the hot dog thing feels like a loss.
Yeah, dude.
It's like,
Yeah.
dude, like take the knocks.
You said something. I was gonna say this earlier. Totally forgot. I'm remembering everything now. When you were talking about fuck, I just forget
I
again.
just blew cigarette smoke right in your face.
That's all right. What were you just saying? Oh. Earlier you were talking about like how everyone's supposed to act so civilized.
Yeah.
And like HR, like all
Oh,
that
yeah.
stuff. Dude, that drives me nuts.
Yeah.
I hate that shit of always have manners. Like I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
mean that. Like always say please, thank you, whatever. But when you have to like if you work
Yeah.
at CVS or some shit, you're like, how are you today?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
person doesn't care, man.
Yeah.
It's always good to be nice, but that dress a certain way, do this shit.
Or just like,
Ugh.
all right, I'm gonna like be mad at you and just not say anything because that would be like uncouth.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like people should, like if I don't want people to be dicks
Right.
to like clerks and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like, but don't just be passive aggressive. That's the
Yeah,
thing
man.
I see a lot of now is like, I don't like him, so I'm just gonna like, I'll write
Yeah.
about it on Twitter. Like I hate
Yeah.
it when I see someone on Twitter like going like, hey, at United Airlines, like you're really fucking me today.
Right.
I'm like, I want to be like, okay, A, you're bragging you're on a plane. B, like, go tell the fucking stewardess
Yeah.
and like send an email.
Right.
By putting it on Twitter, you're just going like, I'm famous, so they're gonna pay attention to this.
Right.
I also want everyone to know like what a big deal I am because I'm
Right.
always on planes, and I get real like judgy about shit like that.
Yeah. No, I don't blame you. Like, dude, if
I'm like, handle it in your life. Don't fucking.
Yeah, don't put it on everybody else. Everyone's dealing with their own shit. That's
Yeah.
like I almost wrote this tweet, but I didn't. But I'm gonna say it. It's very simple. Like, if you tell people to stop complaining, that's not a complaint. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sick of hearing people complain, but I'm not complaining about that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, don't complain. Deal with your shit. Everybody has it, and then just go do something that makes you feel better.
Yeah.
And run with it.
Yeah.
There's
I think,
levels of it.
and I think as a guy who's been in some dark places, I don't think I would have been open to that either when I was in those
Yeah.
dark places.
Right.
Like when I'm in a shitty place, I kind of see the world as shitty. Shane Moss said something like really interesting on his podcast, which is like when he had like his broken foot, his whole sense of like the world was broken
Right.
because he just had this like huge fucking tragedy on his body.
Yeah.
So it affected his whole mood and everything. I think a lot of people are carrying around like because they don't ever actually run or do
Yeah.
anything. They're carrying around like a lot of like energy that should have been used hunting and gathering or
Dude, couldn't agree
fucking.
more. Yeah.
They're carrying around all this energy and it just comes out and like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna yelp this fucker to death,
Yeah.
or I'm gonna go to I'm gonna spend all night coming up with a clever protest sign,
Yeah.
and
Or
then I'm
gonna
gonna
cut him off in
broadcast
traffic.
that. Yeah, it's all like it's coming out in these other fucked up ways.
And it's
There's Tynan, Captain America.
there, you gotta. Speak. What's
Tynan.
up, man?
talking with this loser?
Yeah, no, I agree. You gotta put that energy into good things. That's
Yeah.
recently. We'll finish up in a minute.
Yeah, I'm not in a hurry.
I recently
I gotta pee.
dislocated my shoulder.
Yeah,
about
hey, we're
5
brothers
weeks
there.
ago.
I
Did you?
dislocated my left one.
Me too.
Yeah.
The left.
Yeah.
Recently.
No, I mean I've dislocated it a few times, but
Man.
it's permanently fucked up from. But I didn't do it right. I did it in a pro wrestling match.
Whoa. What?
And here playing softball, I dislocated it at once.
Really?
But it popped back in. I popped it back in both times. But clicks all the time, and it
Yeah.
fucking hurts if I sleep on it weird.
Oh, yeah.
It affects your whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if that's hurting me, I'll feel depressed.
It's exactly where I was going, because
Yeah.
I've been going to physical therapy and stuff, but especially over the last couple of weeks, I've been like, what is my problem?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, I haven't been able to work out, which I always do.
Yeah.
I can't do the things I normally do. I'm like stuck. And then I went, oh, and when I realized that, I started going for runs, because I
Yeah.
can run, and then I started, working on stand-up
Yeah.
even more, and like changing my focus, and I made a video today on Instagram.
Yeah,
like, I'm
yeah.
doing different shit.
No, that's
Because I was feeling broken, man.
it's definitely true, man. When I had a toothache once, I had like I ended up having to get my wisdom teeth taken out, or I was supposed to get my wisdom teeth taken out, and it was like a week or two of like
Yeah.
pretty bad tooth pain. And I
That's
remember
brutal.
It
I've had
really
that.
fucked up like I was a dick, and
Yeah.
like a depressive kind of guy, because I was just, So think about that, and when you see someone who weighs like 400 pounds, it's like not a surprise that they're fucking miserable.
Yeah. Because
Carrying
they
around.
probably have a lot going on. you
Yeah,
know?
and all kinds of not good feelings.
But yeah, dude. So whenever I feel like that, I always just try to take a step back, look at what's going on, and go, okay, deal with this,
Yeah.
and then you do something to make that change.
Yeah, I always try and do
Stay
that. And
positive.
I try and pretend I'm my own buddy. What I say to myself, because when it's your buddy, you're like, bro, just fucking go for a run,
Yeah.
or just do this. Like you're in your head, But when it's you like validate everything, and you're like, okay, I'm always right. So
Mm-hmm.
each individual terrible thought is also right.
Yeah. No, I just stay positive and keep going.
Stay
with it, man.
positive, Matty B.
You too, dude. Good. Happy.
I think it's good,
Wrap
right?
This puppy up. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
It was fun. Happy
You
that
got
we
you
did it.
hit all the questions.
I don't even know. They're just there as kind of like just in casers.
All right.
And,
If there's anything
boom,
left that you
boom.
want, I'm not in a huge hurry.
Nah, man.
All
That's
right,
cool.
good. Seven
right.
inches.
Let's go play softball. Yes. From the ground.
All right,
And
bro.
it's 9 exactly. That
Yeah.
works out. Thanks for doing this, dude. Oh,
My pleasure.
Real quick. So Will's Twitter
Mhm.
is Will Noonan. In Instagram, Will Noonan the comedian.
That's right.
Check out his podcast.
WillNoonan.com is my website.
Oh, there you
Yeah.
go. I'm working on mine right now.
Yeah.
So for this, you can get the website. I'm working on it, podcast.com. And then my comedy website's coming soon.
Nice.
Twitter, at Matthew PB Comedy. Instagram, Matt P. Brown. And for the podcast, it's IWOI Podcast.
Yeah, I like
And,
that.
That's everything. Oh, and your podcast, of course.
High Pathetically with Will
Hypothetically
Noonan.
with Will.
Yeah, Will
There you
Noonan. I can't get my own last name right.
All right, dude. Thanks for doing this, man.
Handshake.
Boom. It's
They can't
official.
see it, but you can feel it.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
All right, man.
Well, I mean, I'm just gonna send you like this raw clip, right? Do you edit at all?
I've
You know what?
edited.
For safety, I'm gonna.